Thank, thank you everyone for a fantastic morning discussion that covered a lot of issues that are very difficult to talk about, and especially when we say you've got an hour, go. So I want to thank you for the rich insight you gave at that meeting, for that discussion. I also wanted to point out, and just as a reminder, that we did talk about sensitive issues such as suicide attempts and suicide thinking. And I just want to remind everyone that there is help. Seek help if you need it. This is the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It is very important. And I also wanted to remind you about sending comments to the public docket, to the website. Again, you can submit without putting any names associated with it or any you don't have to give us any personal information about yourself, but you have more to say, and I know this about the first topic. And if you are on the webcast, we know you have more to say about that. So please consider doing that. You have until June 18. Okay. And now we are going to move into a discussion on current approaches to treating opioid use disorder. And that is, there are the medications that we'll talk about. We'll also talk about other treatment or therapies that you do and how they work together. We won't be able to get into every aspect of the management of OUD. We will be focusing primarily on the medical treatments, and we'd like to know how well those are working for you, and what the biggest problems you faced in using these treatments. We'd also hope to get out of this afternoon what you find to be the most effective in helping to manage your OUD. Again, with a lot of focus on medical treatments and the aspects of medical treatments, but also other things, knowing that it is it takes a village to help. And what you think about when you are making decisions about seeking out or using treatments or not using treatments. I understand we have particularly some people on the webcast who are not currently utilizing treatments. And so if you're on the webcast listening, please type in your thoughts as we get to those. I'm going to ask the panelists to come up, Paul, Carol, Jan, and David's on the phone. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, and Daniel. I was reading David twice. So if you could make your way up, it's the same setup for topic 2. We do have a break at around 2:20. And I want to say one other thing that I imagine it doesn't get said often at FDA. I want to apologize for we did not inform you about the no smoking policy here. So for those of you who were surprised that you had to walk all the way down to the stoplights, I apologize that A, that we didn't inform you, and B, that street is so long. I joke a little bit, but I do apologize for not informing you of that in advance. We appreciate your patience with that. Okay. So, oh no. Can you get me back? Okay, I'm not going to touch. So, we are going to actually start with David, who is on the phone with the first panel comments. And so, operator, can we have David?
Hello?
Hi, David.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm glad you were able to participate on the phone. Again, you can't see, we know you can't see the room, but it is, there are many people in here, and they show their agreement with you by nodding their heads, which you can't see, but we can see it, and so we know that that what folks are saying on the phone is resonating with folks in the room. So with that, please go ahead.
All right, great. And I wanted to say a big hello to the IBR Reach folks from Baltimore. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you guys. I picked up some sushi that was on sale yesterday, and I'm paying for it today. So my apologies. But nevertheless, I still felt it was very important that that I would be able to speak. And my gratitude to you, Sarah, also for setting this up and letting me spend a couple of minutes talking about myself. Basically, nothing really special as far as drug use. I enjoyed using drugs as a teenager, mainly social drugs. I was never really into heavy drugs. And so amongst my friends, we enjoyed smoking pot. We did LSD, MDMA, stuff like that, and mushrooms. And just one day, somebody suggested to snort some heroin, and I never heard about snorting heroin. The only times I thought about heroin was, when you saw it in the movies, people injecting it and dying. So in my mind, I never thought it'd be possible. But nevertheless, I figured, well, it can't be that bad if you're only snorting it. So I gave it a try. And, truth be told, I didn't like it. I vomited. I had a real bad reaction to it. But, as much as I didn't like it, for some reason, the next time it came around, I tried it again. And, off went the boat, so to speak. And it led me to places I never expected to be in my life. And, life was very difficult for me at that point. I lost most of my family members turned their backs on me. Most of the friends that I so-called had, they just, they had wanted nothing to do with me. And I ended up being homeless in Baltimore, panhandling, living on a mattress at an apartment complex. And it was very difficult also for me to get syringes. Every time I went to the pharmacy, they refused to sell syringes to me. They'd play games with me. Well, what do you need them for? For diabetes? Well, what kind of insulin do you take? So there'd always be some trick questions that I didn't know the answer to. And it was very difficult for me to get syringes. So one thing led to another, and I heard about the needle exchange program they had in Baltimore. It was a van that would go around in the city, and they would basically take your old syringes and give you clean ones. And so I signed up, and I was about 22 at that time. And one day I came to pick up new needles, and the guys there on the van said, listen, there's a mayor's initiative program, and it's a program for folks that are drug users that are trying to get some help. And if you like, the next time we arrive, whoever is first in line, we'll give that treatment slot to. Excuse me. And so I figured, let's give it a shot. I tried detox before. I tried rehabs. I tried 12-step programs. I could never get clean for longer than maybe a couple of weeks. I would constantly relapse. And no matter if it was jail or hospitals, there were plenty of times where, I ran out of drugs and money. I would just go to the ER and tell them that I was suicidal, because I knew that they would take me in and at least give me some kind of medicine so I won't be sick. So I had to manipulate my way in order to be able to just receive some sort of treatment so I won't be on the street going through withdrawals. And so sure enough, that day I came, and they gave me a treatment slot, and I went to a program. It was a van, a big mobile van that would drive around in the city, and they would dispense LAM. For folks that don't know, LAM is similar to methadone, but instead of taking it every day, you would only take it 3 times a week. And so, I decided, sure, why not? So I started taking the medication. I kept using drugs. And after about a month or two, when I was decided to use, I didn't feel it anymore. When I bought the heroin and I injected, I just had no euphoric rush whatsoever. And so I get the medication kicked in, and it started working. And let's see. March of 2000 was the last time that I did any kind of illegal substances after that. And the medication just started working. And, I would go to the program, I would comply with their rules, and surely enough, I was able to get my life back in order. And in about 2003, they decided to switch most of the folks to methadone. I guess some folks were having issues with the LAM, with having QTs and issues with their heart. And we'd have to get regular EKGs, and I was always fine with it, but I guess they decided to take it offline and just switch everybody to methadone. So, it was no problem for me. The dosage was fine, and after a while, I was able to earn take-homes, and at this point, around 2010, I qualified for a monthly take-home where they would give the methadone hydrochloride tablets for suspension, and I would take those, and just what they do is, instead of the liquid, you actually have to mix it with water, and you would just drink it. And it's been fine. I mean, I was able to get my life in order. I was able to arrest the cravings and the compulsiveness around the disease and the chasing and the insanity of it. And life was slowly but surely getting back to normal. I was able to go back to school. I was able to expunge my criminal record, which I never thought would be possible, and to get my U.S. citizenship. So just a lot of stuff that I'm grateful and thankful for, So
Thank you.
just the thing is with the medication, of course with methadone, like any medicine, it works great, but there are issues with it too. I have to take other medications because certainly with the methadone, there are some side effects that I have, some weight gain, certainly the constipation, the low testosterone. And so, I was prescribed Constellos for the constipation, Androgel for the low testosterone, glycopyrrolate for the sweat. 'Cause I'm sure a lot of folks, they know when you're on methadone, you sweat a lot, and it can come out of nowhere. It doesn't have to be even hot outside. You could just be sitting in a normal room, and then out of nowhere, you just start sweating really, really hard. So, there are certainly some side effects that come with it, but it's like with any medication, So for sure, if there are other stuff in the future that would benefit me as far as switching to another medication, I'd be very interested in to volunteer and see if there are other stuff, other treatments available. But as far as the dosage goes, my sensitivity is extremely low. Where I've tried to taper off methadone before, and I was always unsuccessful. Where it was just the withdrawal symptoms were extremely high, and my tolerance was very low. So, some people say you might have to stay on it for the rest of your life, which, I guess in terms of living life, yeah, my life is definitely better. But for sure, I would like a life without any kind of medication in the future. That would be the ideal situation. So I'm not going to take up more time, but again, the medication definitely saved my life.
Thank you.
I probably wouldn't be here without it, but for sure, I'd be very interested in future discoveries and anything I can do to volunteer. If there's anything that could be gained from the years that I've been on this medication, I'd love to share it with the world. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are so thankful for you sharing your story. And so now we're going to go down the line, and we'll go with Paul. Yeah, and bring it closer.
Okay. Hi, my name is Paul Bowman. I'm a 54-year-old man from Boston, Massachusetts, and I have a substance use disorder. And I kind of, thinking back when I was preparing this, I thought about when did I know that I liked opioids, and I think I was 12 years old, and I had some the teeth worked on, and I can remember sitting at home and liking the feeling and watching TV of being on an opioid, and I remember taking the whole prescription, not all the same day, but so 12 years old, and that's when I said, like, wow, I really like the way this feels, kind of tune out in the world. So go through life. And went to college and went through high school, came out as a gay man. And then when I was 32 years old, I had a surgery for gynecomastia, which is a breast tissue enlargement. And so after that, I was treated for the pain, the acute pain. And then I was like, this is just too good to give up. And I was treated for that surgery for 3 years for the pain. And at the end, I had this doctor writing me prescriptions for injectable Demerol and getting Dilaudid and Oxycontin and all the rest of it. And that's when I really just knew that I just needed this medication. So I would doctor shop, and even to the point of everything, even trying heroin. And I was injecting medicine. If it wasn't for the needle exchange van in our neighborhood, I would have had HIV or hepatitis C, but thank God, I sought out that. So then I still wanted, at this point, it'd been, 3 years, and I'd lost my family. I still had my job. I worked as a social worker. I took FMLA. I think they thought I was dying of something. They had no idea why I never came to work, but I was almost fired many times. So I would go to detoxes. I went to at least 10 different detoxes. and then I would come home and then relapse again, and then relapse and relapse and relapse, and then I would do 90 days programs, 90 meetings in 90 days, and then relapse, and then finally a doctor said to me, well, you know, you're just too hard. We can't figure you out. Maybe you need to go into the world of liquid handcuffs and go onto a methadone treatment, and I did. And it was really hard though, because I made an appointment. It took 8 weeks to get the appointment. Okay, and then I get there, and I only had a check or a credit card or cash. They needed a money order, so they sent me off to the bank. By the time I got back, my appointment was over. They said, well, you've used up your time. You need to come back in another 8 weeks. So then I came back in 8 weeks, and they said, you need to have a positive opioid. So I had to go out. I'd made it through these 8 weeks, and I had to go out and score heroin in order to get into a methadone program. So I scored the heroin, then got in deep overdose, and I got into a methadone program, and all of a sudden it's like, before you know it, I had 13 take-homes, and I was always going to work, and I'd go to Christmas and Thanksgiving, and had my family back and meaningful relationships, and then it was just incredible. And then I did have some of the side effects that David mentioned, you know, the sweating and sexual dysfunction, and I said, you know what? In 2003, buprenorphine came on the market, and I said, I'm going to try this. So I got onto buprenorphine, and it's been pretty good since then. I went on to a pretty high dose of that. I mean, not high dose. I'm on 24 milligrams, and now I'm on 16 milligrams, and it's an easier drug to manage. I think the hardest part of being on methadone was going to the treatment programs. You know, they're always in bad neighborhoods. You couldn't talk to people. What kind of medical treatment do you have to leave as soon as you get it? Or if you hug somebody, you could lose your take-homes, or if you talk to other people. I mean, it didn't seem like it was a part of any kind of medication system or medical system that was integrated. Now I see a doctor in a primary care setting. The people sitting in the chair next to me are there for diabetes and hypertension. You know, it's my most scary moment on methadone was going into the clinic to pick up my take-homes, that someone might jump me because they might be new in recovery and want to take my take-homes. So now nobody knows when I'm at the doctor's office to see my doctor, who I see once a month, and they have a nurse model. I go to an office-based opiate program in Boston, and I'm just so lucky that in Boston we have such progressive medicine. And we don't have to, you know, go down some dirt road that's unlit to get your methadone treatment. And I don't mean to trash methadone because it saved my life. It's a wonderful drug. I just think that it's too bad that we have to have it so by itself and not a part of any other a part of the system. So I'm also want to tell you, I'm with the National Alliance for Medication Assisted Treatment. They actually help me a lot. There's a lot of things online that help me. Methadone discussion group that we had like 3 people. Now there's 8,000 methadone patients that are on Facebook that help each other out. And if it wasn't for that, so the medication was huge, but the other biggest piece for me, peer recovery centers. I went to a peer recovery center and meeting other people in recovery and them helping me, and having, you know, people in recovery help each other. And I think that really made my recovery strong. And then at the methadone clinic, I know there's one in New York that they do actually have a peer recovery center at the clinic, but most of them, they don't have that. And I think if they had more, you know, treatment like that or things like that, you know, if they had coaching back then, it would have been helpful for me.
Any final thoughts as you wrap up on what you'd like to see the future of treatments?
I think that we need to integrate methadone into primary care, and we need to change these regulations. There's just too much autonomy, and whatever the state wants to do, they can do. And some states don't give out any take-homes, and we've got to do the stigma thing. If people don't meet people like the people in this room, they're going to not ever accept this form of treatment. They're going to see the people that aren't doing well on methadone and Suboxone and think everyone's passed out in a corner, which isn't true. There's so many of us in recovery, and we're never going to get rid of the stigma until we can go out there and show the face of this. And I know people can't do it because it's, that's their own decision, and I'm not saying that you need to, divulge your medical history to people, but I just think that's what would that be my ideal thing is if to get rid of the stigma and not understand why people don't know about this. I met a mom a couple of weeks ago whose son had died, and she never heard of Suboxone. He was in 4 30-day programs, and nobody ever told her that she could have put him on a medication that would have had the most science-based behind it to treat him. And no, another abstinence-based program. He went home, and she found him dead in his room, and she's pissed. So, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Paul, you raised a lot of
after 90 days, you're allowed to have one take-home. Some states, they let you have a take-home on Sunday. Massachusetts, they don't give you any take-homes. So that means you have to have
medication you can bring.
Bring home with you. So every day you have to come and pick it up. I actually was lucky that my methadone clinic was at the police station. So I get to go to the police station every morning. So my neighbors would say, why are you in a van at the police station every morning? It was very confidential in the parking lot. So we go there. And so take home is after you had 90 days. And you know what? People say the word clean. None of us are dirty. We don't have to say clean. Stop the language. We have a positive urine. We're not dirty people. Whoever made us think we were dirty, all of this has got to stop in order for us to get rid of the stigma. And I'm sorry to be so passionate here.
The issue of stigma underlies everything we're talking about today. And so even though it's going to be hard for medical treatments to address stigma as a clinical benefit, we do recognize the importance of that, even if we don't get to delve into it quite as much today.
No,
so
again,
thank you, Paul. And I know that others, let's applaud if you feel the same way about the importance of stigma. So there you have driven home that point. Let's move on to Carol to keep the meeting moving.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Carol McDade, and I'm a woman in long-term recovery. I started using drugs at age 13. I was genetically predisposed to addiction on both sides of my family as a first-generation Irish American. I started using opiates when I was like 18 or 19, and I'm old, so I'll be 58 in May, so just to give you a sense of how things change in the drug world. I started using opiates as a way to come down off cocaine when I was in college. And opiates had a much worse stigma, I think, than they do today on college campuses where, pain pills and heroin is fairly, unfortunately, not stigmatized. It caused great shame. There were partiers, and then there were those junkies. And when I started using heroin, I got that stigma. My experience as a person in long-term recovery, a treatment and recovery advocate as part of my job and my career, I've worked and helped start a recovery community organization in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a part of organizations like Young People in Recovery. And a big shout out to young people in recovery across the country who might be listening and online. What I've learned is that there's no wrong door to recovery. And, my experience is that, I was on methadone treatment. Unfortunately, I did not have as positive as an experience back in the early 80s as David has, and maybe Paul. And please don't send me hate mail. I'm not grinding on methadone. I'm just sharing my story here. For me, I was sort of, following a boyfriend who was on a methadone program. It was in a part of town where you could cop other drugs at the same time and kind of learn, who was doing what to. I was the who was boosting what at places around town to get money to use. And because I looked kind of sweet and innocent like the Campbell Soup girl, I was the return lady for stolen goods at stores. It was not, a great recovery pathway for me. Just leave it at that. And I had some of the same side effects from that particular treatment modality as some others have talking about. It's not really dainty or feminine to be sweating profusely in the summer and all of your clothes have these big stains all over them. It's not lovely. So I also have used medicalized detox and residential treatment twice that use biopsychosocial model for recovery. And today I manage my recovery using recovery management techniques that include a lot of things, but that can include, does include 12-step meetings and active participation, being an active member of a recovery community organization. I give and receive peer supports from other women. I also use counseling. I use antidepressant to manage anxiety, and I use exercise, meditation, yoga, and therapeutic massage, all to help manage my recovery. But, patients' experience and the needs about while there's no wrong door to recovery, patients' experience and their needs about which door works for them and has worked for them and that they've been exposed to really matters, and I think it's often ignored. One particular pathway appears to get pushed in this country at any particular time, rather than kind of creating a climate and incentives for all options to be viable for people, and that they should be accessible, and it should be based on the patient's needs and experience with other treatments. In recognition of the reality, frankly, that we don't have data in this country that perfectly matches an individual to the exact intervention that works for them. And until we have that, which I hope we do, people ought to be able to choose pathways and not kind of get forced down to one and shamed if that one pathway doesn't work for you. I think outstanding areas in my recovery that I would like help with, whether through drug interventions or devices or other interventions that are still lacking for me, are a really good tool for managing stress. Stress is a trigger, even with 20 years in recovery, I still don't have stress management down, and it definitely triggers addictive feelings in me today. I have co-occurring addictions, and when I first got into recovery, I remember almost being kicked out of a recovery program because I had co-occurring bulimia and eating disorder, and they were like, "Oh, no, we only deal with drugs and alcohol. We're going to have to ask you to leave." And I kind of begged and pleaded my way into staying. But a person with a substance use disorder that shows up in different areas of their life should not be shamed and be told that you get kicked out because you have more than one way that your substance use disorder expresses itself. And, it affects areas of the brain where it's going to show up in different ways. I think it can also show up for me on like overspending of money. The feeling of wanting more of anything that changes my mood, it's quieted down with 20 years of recovery, but it's not been cured. And it impacts my self-esteem because at this age, I think, or this amount of recovery, I should have this all together by now, right? Like, come on, Carol, like get with a program. You're supposed to be like in a better spot. And addiction is a chronic thing, and we have to teach people that, and that not to shame themselves. As I age, managing chronic and acute pain poses challenges for me in my recovery. Clinicians still push opiates on me, despite me revealing my opiate use disorder, and are often unwilling to use non-opioid alternatives, and often when I've had to get surgery, call me or tell my husband that I'm hysterical about opiates. Healthcare professionals need to discuss an opiate management plan with their patients who self-identify as having an opiate use disorder, and what works for me and how I do my opiate plan, but I don't think everybody has to do it this way, because remember, I'm hysterical about the way that I manage it, is that what works for me is having others handle the medication for me, or we hide it in my house, you know, and I get a little text and go on a treasure hunt every 4 hours or whatever I'm, you know, prescribed as. Having an accountability partner, for me, I talked to a sponsor about it, but it could be a loved one or a friend or whatever. For, you know, I have a plan for the period that I'm taking them. And during recent rotator cuff surgery, I had to stay on opiates for 2 weeks, and I could feel myself becoming, you know, just, you know, counting the footsteps of the person managing the medicine and all of that kind of stuff. So quickly, as I finish up, just a couple of systemic suggestions perhaps to leave with people. I think the FDA should use the REMS process more aggressively to require those they regulate to help with public education campaigns for individuals, families, and communities. I think we should have medical, professional, and peer education curricula that they already do and are good at and could do more of. I think that they could use could use REMS for more strategies and use the FDA for more than just like a black box warning on a drug. I think there's a lot more authority there that could be used. I think price should be looked at for MAT to treat addictions, and in particular, if you're going to recommend non-opioid pain alternatives, make sure there's actually insurance reimbursement and coverage of them, because a lot of times people will say, yes, of course, like go get, you know, the such and such, and I try to get Toradol, and my plan will say it's not covered. So that doesn't make sense.
Any final thoughts, final words?
Yeah, I think that there is also a workforce shortage, and while this isn't necessarily in the FDA's purview, I think that people have to realize that our people who treat addiction don't get reimbursed like other chronic medical conditions, and that is something that payers and others in our community can and should fix, especially since the government's one of the biggest payers for addiction services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. We have Jan.
My name is Jan. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, which means for me that I haven't used drugs or alcohol for the past 31 years. Sustaining my recovery allows me to be the founder and executive director of Spirit Works, which is a recovery community organization in Williamsburg, Virginia, an ordained deacon in the Episcopal Church, earning an advanced master's of science in addiction studies, a board member of Faces and Voices of Recovery, and a consultant and subject matter expert on issues of addiction and recovery. I've been invited to share my perspectives, specifically my experience with naltrexone. Back in the day, it was called Revia. I took it for about 7 years, subsequent to sustaining a traumatic brain injury. What was happening was I was participating in rehab to recover from my brain injury, and I wanted to maintain abstinence. The treatment worked well for me as I was able to maintain abstinence during a very stressful period of time in my life. Success for me looked like I did not return to active addiction, and I also experienced no cravings. The biggest problems that I experienced were associated with stigma, as has been mentioned. It happened for me when I went to pick up my medications at the pharmacy. Until I developed a relationship with my pharmacy and my pharmacist, ensuring that the medication was available was a huge problem. Revia was something that was not kept in stock, which meant that some months it needed to be ordered and required me to wait for a few days, which meant that there were periods of time when I didn't have it. Also, there was a period of time when the cost of the medication was prohibitive. I think that's better now. I used to pay $1,000 a month for it many years ago. I do not currently use prescription medical treatments to address my opiate use disorder. Instead, I attend mutual support meetings. I use my faith tradition, friends, and family support. Doing so continues to work very well. I also maintain a healthy lifestyle, which includes proper nutrition, sleep, and other aspects of health and wellness. Maintaining what I call a culture of recovery is critical to my recovery, as it means that my recovery is the most important aspect of my life. Without it, as somebody had said earlier, I cannot sustain life. The treatments, therapies, and supports that I have found most effective, I consider in two different ways. One was in the short term, I needed medication, I needed counseling, mutual support meetings, my faith tradition, family and friend support. Long term, I continue again with mutual support meetings, faith traditions, and family and friend support. The three major factors that I take into account when making decisions about seeking out or using treatments for OUD. So the first one is that it depends upon the specific treatment outcome that I'm looking for. In other words, that I need to know what the reason is that I am taking a medication or seeking a different type of treatment. I also need to know, as Carol said, who are the people that will support my decision, and I need to include them as accountability partners. And also accountability partners, but to also help me with my decision-making process in the first place, so that I know what my motives are and I'm doing things for the right reason. The other one that I need, I think Carol also mentioned, I need a specific plan as I engage in a particular treatment in order to protect my recovery. An ideal treatment for OUD, I believe, includes medication for the biological piece. If it's medically necessary, I think that therapy, some type of counseling, and recovery support services are critical. Each of these components is necessary in order to facilitate the achievement and maintenance of long-term recovery. Their dose, frequency, and strength will depend based upon the specific needs of the individual. No one size of treatment fits all. I think for me, and I was talking about it with somebody at the table earlier, that there were time periods when, recovery is not static. And so what I needed in the beginning didn't necessarily look like what I needed further down the road. I took Revia for about 7 years and I no longer take it. I needed it during that time period. It's not something that I required anymore. I am grateful for the use of naltrexone during the period of years when I was experiencing a challenging time in my life. Given my success in using it, I would do it again if the need presented itself. As I am very motivated to maintain an abstinence-based recovery program, taking naltrexone in pill form was effective for me. I do know of others who take Vivitrol injections, and that has been a better method for them because it doesn't allow them to change their mind for at least 30 days. And I also have been told of people and work with people who, in their desperation, have removed their implants in order to use. So knowing, as Carol said, knowing the best patient for whom treatment is indicated is definitely something that needs to be considered.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Jan.
you.
And finally, we have Daniel.
Hello. I'm Daniel from Brooklyn, New York. Thank you very much for having me. So I just want to set the scene for a second here. So picture this, that you're in a jail cell by yourself. You're about $1 million in debt. You have no idea where you are. Your girlfriend at the time comes to pick you up, and it's about 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and you stumble your way into the car, and you forget who she is. Like you didn't realize that's your girlfriend. So that was me about 5 years ago. Today, I am 100%, I guess, clean or in recovery, for about 3 years. And that girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now. So that's, so I did that using Suboxone treatment. So I guess I'm the proof that that treatment works. I'm currently not on any substance at all, haven't been for about 3 years. Like I said. So essentially, what happened with me is after that scene that I just mentioned to you, I was put into a pretrial intervention program. I had good lawyers who put me into that program, and basically I elected to do the Suboxone treatment because that was one of the conditions for being a part of that, and you had to kind of get your life together, get a job, etc. So I did that, and why the Suboxone treatment works, in my opinion, and I'll only share my opinion and what worked for me, because there are a lot of different ways of getting there, but I can only share what worked for me, and hopefully that helps the experts here figure out what to do. So the Suboxone works, in my opinion, because it curbs the withdrawal, which is probably the root of the crisis. Because, as you know, those in who have OUD will probably do anything to not experience the effects of withdrawal or the sickness that comes with that. So that's what leads to the criminal activity, et cetera, in order to obtain more substances. So that's one factor that's very important. Another factor with regards to a successful treatment outcome would probably be the right social environment, social setting. In my experience, it was being lucky enough to get a very good job where I had a very strong support system with the right people around me who supported me. I'm not sure if they even knew about my past. I guess it doesn't matter. I felt very comfortable there, and I think that that's essential. So that's the second aspect. And the third is creating a situation of stability. So the job is one aspect of the stability factor. With me, I think faith works for me. I'm not going to go, tell you to become a priest, but it works for me, or a rabbi. It works for me. But I found a bigger connection to God. And like I said, I'm not pushing that because I know everybody has their own relationship with regards to religion. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I ended up tapering myself off the Suboxone. I'm not advocating that because I think that if you are taking the pills, or by the way, I was up to about 50 pills a day at my worst. So I was bad. I was really bad. This was 5 years ago. So if you're taking the pills, and then you got to stay on the Suboxone or whatever treatment to keep yourself off that, I would say you should stay on that for the rest of your life. But I elected to get off the Suboxone, and I tapered myself off eventually. So that's that's my situation, and we got to help each other. Obviously, we're all in this together. We got to help each other. I started a website. It's called Dan's Recovery Team, dansrecoveryteam.com. Check it out when you get a chance, and hopefully we'll beat this. We'll beat this. All right. Thank you.
Thank you to all the, can everyone hear me? Okay. Thank you to all of the panelists. We hope that we found panelists people who had experiences with a number of different treatments that we wanted to discuss today. And I thought that that you all very well articulated your journey, your experiences, recognizing that they are your own experiences. And so what we're going to do now is to see how we can expand upon those experiences. We'll also get into some of the downsides of treatment in a little bit. But first of all, let me just ask one. I usually do a show of hands about how did you hear your own stories here, but let me just talk about your journeys to recovery and how they started. I thought you all articulated that very well. And did you see, was it similar journeys to recovery for you? Similar, okay. So I appreciate how much you conveyed to us and reminded us of the complexity and the difficulty of that. So, but now we're going to focus in on medications, and I have a polling question. There aren't nearly as many now, but I would like you to answer a polling question so we get a sense of the experiences with treatments in the room and on the web. So if you can get the clickers handy, This is check all that apply. So have you ever used any of the following, you or your loved one? Okay. So the opioid agonist, so that would be methadone. The opioid antagonist, such as naltrexone, which we heard about. The opioid partial agonists, such as buprenorphine or buprenorphine naloxone, and that's Suboxone. Other prescription or over-the-counter medications that you have used to address your opioid use disorder. Other medications that aren't mentioned, again, to address your opioid use disorder. Or F, I've never used any medications to address opioid use disorder. Okay. And so we encourage you on the web to participate as well. Okay, anyone still working? Are we, okay, let's see what, okay. So we have, basically we have all the medications represented in the room, methadone and buprenorphine or Suboxone, the most represented. Other prescription over-the-counter meds, and some of you in here have never used any medications. Can we see what the responses on the webcast were?
Very similar, almost the same actually.
Okay. I think there's one group that has several people who may have not used medications. Let's start there actually and take a few comments on, for those of you who are comfortable, sharing why you have not used any medications, and on the web as well. So we'll come here. You'll take Amanda and I'll come.
Question. What is Narcan? Does it fall anywhere on that list?
So no, I mean, so that's
Narcan
naloxone.
is just naloxone.
It's so it's not on the list of.
No, because it's not a treatment, it's an antidote to an opioid overdose.
Okay. So go ahead.
Naloxone is part of the Suboxone medication.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at your your Suboxone and you see that there's a milligrammage and then a slash and then another milligrammage, that's the naloxone portion of the Suboxone medication. I chose to not use medicine-assisted recovery, partially because of the amount of time that I was in inpatient detox. The other part was I was using opioids and Klonopin at the same time, and normally within the same quantities. And because they were so paired, they chose to taper me off, and that did kind of help-ish with my withdrawal. It handled the mental portion of withdrawal. And by the time I got into other therapies like DBT and the length of time that I stayed in intensive treatment, I was in treatment for 180 days. That kind of support and community engagement of just recovery made it so that I didn't feel that the medication was necessary. If I were to relapse tomorrow, I probably would choose to do medicine-assisted recovery because A, I know that my likelihood of maintaining recovery is higher if I use medicine-assisted recovery, and B, it's a safety net. I have a child, I have responsibilities, I have a job, and I want the dependency of the reliability that medication would provide me. And I also know that second relapse has a much higher, that relapse has a much higher chance of me dying. And right now is, you know, the shot I would have today is not the shot I would have had 7 years ago.
Thanks very much. Okay, so one more back there, and then we'll get a summary if there's any web comments on this.
I just want to first make the comment that I'm a little troubled that this panel is only made up of people who have used medication-assisted treatments approved by the FDA and sold by drug companies. There are a lot of other treatments that work that are not medication-assisted therapies that the pharmaceutical industry profits off of. I spent 7 years trying Suboxone, methadone, 12-step programs, various rehabs. And what finally worked for me was a substance called Ibogaine that is a Schedule I illegal substance in this country, thank you, and it is not currently under investigation by the FDA. And I want to ask, why are we not talking about things like Ibogaine? Why are we only focusing on long-term opioid maintenance? Not to disqualify anyone's valuable experiences, because I know those do work for a lot of people, but there are other options, and I'm a little troubled that this panel is only people advocating for medication-assisted treatment. What about these other options? Not just Ibogaine, but other things that aren't even medication at all. Why aren't we talking about that? But something like Ibogaine, which is the only substance that removes opioid withdrawal, that is not another opiate that you do not have to keep taking. I did Ibogaine 6.5 years ago and have not touched a single substance since, and I do not use medications treatment. And I just want to bring this up, and I want to have an answer as why the FDA is not putting all the resources they have to investigating this treatment. Yes, there are deaths associated with it, but there's deaths associated with any medication. You have to follow a safety protocol for any medication, so I would like to hear someone address my comment about Ibogaine. Thank you.
You know, I would have tried Ibogaine if it was available. I have to agree with you. And I do know that at least they're keeping the plant alive, so they haven't killed it off completely in this country. But needs to be. I almost went to Mexico and did it, but I think you make a great point that Ibogaine is something that that we don't talk about enough.
Okay. So the point we'll have.
Sure, I'll try to answer your question very generally. I think most people probably know that FDA doesn't actually do the research. We provide some oversight, regulatory oversight, to people doing research, and if people want to develop drugs that they could bring to market, we provide them with guidance and advice on how to design their trials. And when it's all finished, they submit that application to us, and we vet the results and information about how they make the product and so forth, and eventually it can come to market. That's why we're having this meeting, because we really want to understand how a medication could be evaluated for effectiveness that might be completely different from anything that we already have available. What if something completely new, something totally out of left field that it wasn't an agonist, it wasn't an antagonist, it wasn't a partial agonist, or maybe another version of one of those? How should we evaluate that drug and assess whether it's doing what patients need it to do? And that's why we wanted to understand what you want it to do. So FDA is quite open to all different types of treatments, and we just need to get a better handle on how to evaluate them.
So we probably won't have time to get too much of the experience with that particular medication, but with the amount of clapping that went on, I think there might be other experiences. So please, if you're on the web, feel free to write in. And this might be something, consider putting a docket comment with your experiences and your perspectives on that. Okay. So are there any summaries on the web, particularly about using any of the medications?
Just a lot of people echoing what they've been hearing in the room,
Okay.
and mentioning they're using similar treatments.
Great. That is a great sign if we can see echoing from the people on the webcast, because we know that it's difficult to make it here to the FDA. And so the fact that we are hearing echoes demonstrates that there are a lot of, that what we're hearing here is shared with others. Okay, let me, go ahead. Wait till we get the microphone. There.
I'm a long-term recovering addict. And for me, I had to treat my addiction once I got on the methadone, like if I had diabetes, because I used my high power of my choice to put faith in, to have faith, knowing I can do all things. But when I would try to get off the methadone, I relapsed sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't good. I would find myself back out there, back in jail. And I didn't want that. So I said, somebody told me, a counselor, said, try to treat it if it's a disease, number one. You have a disease. And no matter what, you have to face it deal with it and do what's best for you. You can't do what nobody else do. You have to do what's best for you. And that's what I've done. And it's been 22 years today.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back there.
So my name's Louise, and I'm here as a patient and patient advocate, and I'm here with the Urban Survivors Union, and we are a user union. And one of my questions is, why are we only looking at abstinence as the end goal? It seems that that's, that we can only be completely well or completely sick, and there's a lot of room in the middle. And sometimes it takes a long time to get from one place to another. And sometimes we don't want to get to the other place. So I think we need to show some, it would be interesting to me, and it would be part of, what would help a lot of the people that I know and work with if there was, some discussion about that.
Okay. So can I turn this question around? Okay. Let me ask you, 'cause we're skipping ahead a little bit. You had good insight into what we wanted to learn today. No, keep the microphone there. What if it's not abstinence or addressing withdrawal? What would you like? What would you like it to do? A medication?
I would like to be able to manage my use,
okay,
so that I can have the best possible life. So I am able to have the best possible life I can have.
And what does manage use you mean? Mm-hmm.
Excuse me?
And what does manage use? Describe that to us.
Manage would mean I am able to go to work and function and do what I need to do. If I hadn't found drugs, then I feel I would have probably killed myself. So the alternative to what some other people had said, they were using drugs, and the drug use made them want to kill themselves.
Okay, can I get to feel comfortable with a show of hands about how many people, and you said I don't want to repeat your name for privacy. Louise, okay. Show of hands or claps if you share Louise's perspective, knowing that not everyone shares it, but some do. Okay. Any questions you want for follow-up on? Any questions for follow-up on that?
So, Louise, hi. So I have talked to you before. I'm glad you're here. This is Mitra. And we're looking at all aspects. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we are having this meeting, that we know recovery has different meanings to different people. And there is, as someone said, there is no wrong door and there is no wrong approach. Everyone has their own approach. And some people want that total abstinence, which is great. But at the same time, it's great to have not total abstinence. It could be that you decrease your illicit drug use. You are on medication, you're fully functioning, you have the right relationships, you're working. So, I mean, we are looking at all aspects because there is no one size that fits all.
So what I'll do then, I'll suggest, and we have to go back to a question, but so as not to lose this topic, I don't think we can spend too much more time on that. But this is another great thing for the docket, or if you're on the website and you share this perspective about wanting to manage your use, try to be as concrete as possible about what that looks like. Is it that you use only at certain times of the week? Is it that you need to only use at certain times of the day, that you can, when you absolutely can't use it, that you're able to not use it for a period? So be as concrete like that and write in your comments. That is something that would be extremely useful for our docket and for the webcast. Okay, and with that, I'm going to move to, let me ask, I think there's a question from Alan, a person who's been instrumental in our planning. He's an FDA expert, by the way.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. I'm finding your comments incredibly helpful. This is a question initially for Paul, because he mentioned this other drug at the break, but anyone else as well. What role do you see to be played or being played by clonidine, also known as Catapres, in opioid use disorder?
I've only known clonidine to be used in detoxes and to use to get high when you're on methadone. Does anyone else ever use it to get high when they're on methadone? Anyone in the room? I'm the only person.
Okay, you got another hand right beside you.
All right, how about, because it intensifies, and I never knew you could do that until I tried it, because they were selling it outside of the parking lot. But clonidine in full agonist intensifies itself. But by itself, I had used it for detox, and it was quite effective.
Okay. So we'll take one more. Is this comment about this? Is your comment about this? Go ahead. No? Okay.
I mean, with all these alternates, for me, the methadone was an alternate for the heroin, and which worked good for me through the years. But my question, in somewhat view of this, is what is the ultimate answer for someone to get to the abstinent point, or is it another drug? And as in that falls behind the methadone process. If you want to, in order to get to the abstinent goal, to come off methadone altogether.
So the question, I think, is your question, the question you're raising is, if you don't want to be on methadone, what do you do next? What's your next?
What's the next move? Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if we have the answers, but sure, maybe a few ideas. Okay.
You don't have to get on methadone. If you're on heroin, you can get on heroin maintenance, and if it's prescribed in a regulated dose like they do in Switzerland, the UK, and several other countries in Europe, you don't ever have to transfer your dependency to methadone. You can stay on heroin, become stabilized far quickly. And even better, if they offered a supervised injection facility for folks to come in, be monitored so that they don't overdose and die, that's a way that works, and it's been proven to be effective in Canada and other countries. So we need that in the United States.
So let me ask a slightly different way. What would you like, if you're on methadone and want to get, not to be using, what would you need to see for your health benefits if you were to go on to a different treatment? What would you need to see? Let's go here. We have one here, and then one in the back there. And then we're going to take a break, 15-minute break.
Well, I'm on methadone, and I think the outcome is that once you stabilize your life like I have, and you can go back and start doing things to implement yourself in society again, then you take a long-term detox off it. You don't rush off methadone, but you can take a long-term detox that eases your way down to where you become undependent on it.
So that would be your goal. So that's your goal too. We have one. Okay. So anyway, we got this a couple different same goals. One more over there, and then we'll take a break.
Okay, you stay on treatment. Stay on treatment, and you keep going to groups, and you listen. That's how you get off.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like this, you guys there will be some break conversations at your table. I think this has stirred up a lot of great insight and sounds like of interest to you. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to have to keep moving on. We have a few other questions that we want to get to. So we'll be for 15 minutes. Please come back at 2:35.